An audit will only make sense if its report is public and if it's regular. So because the code is always changing, you can't really audit it with your code once and be like, okay, I've done the audit and that's it. You have to continuously do it, and people should be able to use audited versions aside from the latest version. So you can stay on the audited version and be sure that this doesn't have any security vulnerabilities and it's secure and private.
Hello Techlorians. Today I have the pleasure of bringing on Abdullah from Notesnook, who will be talking to us about the challenges of developing end-to-end encrypted note-taking services, their journey the last several years, what you can expect from them going forward, and much more. It's always really nice to get insight firsthand from the people who develop the services that a lot of the community uses. So I hope you enjoy some of this behind-the-scenes insight into what it's like to develop a service. Welcome to Techlore Talks, Abdullah. I wanted to just start with people who maybe don't know who you are and want to know a little bit about you and Notesnook. So do you want to kind of tell me about yourself and a little bit about Notesnook?
I'm Abdullah, the CEO and the lead developer of Notesnook. And for the last 5 years, I have been working on Notesnook with my team. And that's basically what we have been doing all along. And our mission and goal with Notesnook is to, bridge the gap between privacy and productivity, kind of like a mixture between Evernote and still Notes, but it has deviated a little bit from that. But that's our the main mission, to connect privacy with productivity.
So we did an interview, I think a couple years ago now, so people might have remembered that one if they've been listening to these episodes for a while.
Yes, yeah.
So what's kind of changed since our last interview? I mean, people really liked our last interview, and it was a really good intro to Notesnook, but I know it's been a couple years and things change, so do you want to fill me in? Because I'm also still trying to...
Yeah.
I don't know all the details.
Yeah. So a lot has been going on in the background, of course. We have moved on into our new office. We have changed locations, and aside from that, in the Notesnook thing, we have been working on the version 3 since last year, and that has been still our primary focus. And we have added some really major features, some really exciting updates. A lot of privacy pro features, and these last few months I've been really researching AI and how we can incorporate it into Notesnook. So a lot of things have been going on, and since our last interview, collaboration has come up. We talked about collaboration in our interview and how we can improve it and incorporate it into Notesnook. So that has been constantly under discussion. One of the things that has been highlighted since releasing version 3 was self-hosting. So we have been internally working on that. Again, it's a lot of things. It was a huge release. The version 3 was a huge release.
Some questions came up that I took note of here as you were talking. So I guess the first one is, for people who are new, where are you based out of? And how's the new transition to the office been? Was there a reason you moved to a new office?
Yeah, okay, so we are based out of Pakistan, as I think a lot of people know or don't know. We are kind of in the periphery, we have been working out of our village, and then now recently we have moved to our town. It's called Nashara, and it was a really productive decision, because before we were kind of working from home. It was the whole Notesnook operation was based in our homes. We've been working from there, but now we have moved into our office, set up everything up, and it has been really cool. And that's why we were really hectic this past 3-4 months. We were doing the V3 release, and then on the side we were also setting up our new office, everything like that. Yeah.
Nice. I'm sure it's nice also to work in a dedicated environment. Does the new office have anything to do with servers or where data is being stored for users, or has that still been the same?
No. That's still been the same, because we are still kind of a small operation. So like hosting our own data center, that's a big thing. That would be the next step. That would be the next step. Yeah.
Got it.
Right now it's just working. It's like yeah, it's like very productive here. It's more productive here than we were at our home. More focused. Everything is more targeted and yeah.
Very cool. You mentioned new privacy features from the last couple years. Do you want to dig into what some of those new privacy features have been and why you introduced them?
Yeah. So the main okay. Let's. I want to give a background. When Notesnook started out, it was based on we explicitly wanted to be cross-platform. So whatever we did, we made sure that we were on every platform. That meant taking a few trade-offs. So for example, we were using a different database on all our platforms. We wanted to keep things simple, so it was a simple key value database. But now we eventually, when more and more users was coming, and it was a scalability issue. Like a lot of users from Evernote came that had like 50 GB of notes. Like that was the first time I heard like someone had 50 GB of notes. So we had to migrate, and we migrated to SQLite. And so one of the reasons that we had to migrate towards SQLite was we wanted to bring at-rest encryption. And what at-rest encryption, because people confuse at-rest encryption and end-to-end encryption, is the difference is like end-to-end encryption starts from when the data leaves your device and when it goes to the servers. At-rest encryption is when the data comes from the servers and is stored on the device. And before we had end-to-end encryption, I want to be clear on that. We were encrypting everything, all your notes, notebooks, and everything on the device, and then sending it off to our servers with the key that only you have. So we didn't have any access. I want to be clear on that. But what we were not doing was we were not encrypting or storing your data on your device encrypted. Before V2. Now, after V3, everything is stored encrypted on your device, encrypted. It's a random key. No one has access to it. Even if they get access to your device, they won't be able to, download your notes and see whatever. So that's the primary privacy thing, and it was requested a lot by a lot of users. Everyone was like, "This is a private notes app. Why don't you have at-rest encryption?" So it took a long time, almost like 4.5 years, but I'm glad it's here, finally. Yeah.
So what you're saying there for people listening, there's always been end-to-end encryption. So if someone created a note, Notesnook was never able to see that note on your end. The issue would be if, let's say, someone installed malware on their device, the malware would be able to easily get their Notesnook notes from their device locally, but now that it's encrypted, it's a lot harder to view that data.
Yeah, not easily. Not easy. I want to be clear on that. It wasn't easy to extract your data.
Right. That's a
big
big assumption.
It would have to be. It would have to be a targeted malware that would be installed on your device. It would be like specific to Notesnook. We weren't storing your data in plain text files, to be clear. But it was still plain text in the sense that if someone like really wanted to take a look inside, they could easily see whatever was going on.
Right.
But now it's impossible. It's encrypted.
Right. Sorry, I probably should have done a better job of outlining. It's not that easy to do that. Mainly because of, I'm sure, sandboxing on devices. It's very hard to do that, but now it's a lot harder for something to be able to access that data.
Yeah, it's completely impossible, actually. You will have to have the key to decrypt. There's no other way.
Got it. All right. Well, I guess that's really good, and I'm sure people will like to hear those nice privacy and security improvements. Have there been any other features that you've rolled out since then on the privacy security sphere, or is that the big one that you've worked on? I know that had a lot of work that went into it, but...
Yeah. Okay. So One of the other connected features to address encryption is app lock. So app lock has been a thing on your Android device for Notesnook for a long time. So you could unlock the app, and you could put a password or pin on it, and it would work. But that was just like a shield, it was just a lock. It wasn't doing anything actually. But after V3, when we introduced address encryption, we have changed that, and now it's more like you're using a custom PIN or custom password for the database. So it's more secure, and you also get it's not just in the background anymore. You can, if you set up the app lock, anyone who opens Notesnook first has to enter the PIN or a password, or use their security key like a YubiKey or something, and then they can open the notes if they have access to something like that. Other than that, we have been working on, we have introduced tabs, so you can work on multiple notes side by side. That's also something that Obsidian has, but not a lot of apps have that. It's still in its infancy. There are a lot of things to work on, but we had to add it in V3. And we also fixed and improved our sync. That was one of the most highlighted and most frustrating user experiences. So we fixed that as well. And another big feature that a lot of people were asking for was note linking, inspired by Obsidian and Notion. So we added that as well. A lot of things. I forgot to mention one more thing. We changed our logo. I'm not sure if everyone has seen the new logo, but it's a huge improvement over the last one. Yeah.
I thought they both looked good. So yeah, I do think the new one is definitely better, but I don't think the last one was maybe as bad. But I know it's easy when you're the one making it. You see the old logo and you're like, I hate it, but the new one's so good. I know when we go through logo changes, that's what I go through at least.
Yeah, the logo. Yeah, the whole scene behind the logo was a lot of people came out to us and they were like, we can't theme this logo. The new Android I think has this themed logo, themed icon thing, where you can theme your icons to your wallpaper and stuff like that. It wasn't possible in the old logo because it had gradients and it has a lot of things going on inside the logo anyway. And when you would resize it to a small size, it wasn't really nice to look at. So this new logo is a huge improvement over that. So you can play around with it, change colors, everything. It's nice.
Very nice. You mentioned that there were some very requested features. Are there, I guess, how did you select which features to roll out for V3? And are there features that you wish you could have included in V3 that you're working on now that you're able to share that are coming soon? I guess, what can people expect who are currently in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to change was the pricing. It's not a feature, but it was constantly on our minds, because when we introduced pricing, the pro plans, the subscription plans in Notesnook was very basic. It literally had very few things going on for it. But now, after 3 years since we first introduced subscription plans, a lot of things have changed, and we have added a lot of new features, a lot of new updates. So that was something that we wanted to add into V3, but we decided against, because that would take too long. And another feature was self-hosting. Yeah, self-hosting. It keeps coming up, but I have literally been bullied. Not in a serious way, but I've been online. A lot of people are like, why haven't you brought out self-hosting yet? Why haven't you published it? Our servers are open source. I want that to be clear. It's open source. Anyone can see it and run it, etc., etc. But we haven't launched official support for self-hosting it on your own infrastructure. And a lot of people have been it has been really stressful, when the users come to you and they're like, "Why haven't you done this yet?" But I want it like everyone who's watching right now. Like we are working on it, and it's coming really soon, really, really, really soon.
Got it. Yeah, it must be a very vocal minority because if you have end-to-end encryption, I think most end users are pretty happy with that, but I'm guessing the few who really want self-hosting are going to be the loudest about it. So I'm sure they're going to
Yes,
appreciate that.
yes, of course. Yeah, that and it's like it's like a whole community. Yeah, there's a whole community of people who want to self-host, who or even if they don't want to self-host, they want to have this. They want to be convinced that they can self-host if in the future, something happens to Notesnook and stuff. So it's a kind of like a security thing.
With all these features you're rolling out, last time we spoke about, I guess the way, if I'm remembering correctly, and I did re-listen a little bit to our last interview to just refresh my memory, but you kind of described Notesnook back then as you were going for a one-to-one matched alternative to something like Evernote or any of these mainstream providers, but with privacy by default. People wouldn't even know that it's a privacy service because it just does everything by default. So is that still kind of where you envision your journey to be? You mentioned earlier that might not be quite exactly what you're going for right now. What's the current mission / strategy for you?
Okay, so what's changed that we have kind of crossed that boundary between like one-to-one compatibility. Of course, we're not like one-to-one compatible. That's impossible to do. Not impossible to do, but it's not like a thing that we want to do. But we want to be very close to it. Like if someone is coming from Evernote, they would feel right at home and even feel like it's better. But we have crossed it in a few areas. We are still lacking. Like a few people mentioned that are coming from Evernote. They mentioned that there's no OCR. Like we upload images, we add PDFs, and there's no OCR, or the search is not that great. But in every other sense, we have kind of like crossed that boundary. There's like we have a good sync going on. Our pricing plans are better. We have good foundation for multitasking, and we have better organization features. Some things can be improved, and we are working on those. But yeah, that has been done. What we are focusing right now on is like it, it's like there are some things that the Evernote and Stern Notes and all those apps don't do, and that's targeting Obsidian and Notion. That uh, set of features. So that's our new focus now. Like we want to like when we brought out note linking, our target audience was people coming from Obsidian because that's where the most people use note linking. So that's like our in the future that will be that's where our focus will be. And the new like a general goal for Notesnook is to be something that works for you. It just works. You don't have to set things up in a complex way. There are not a lot of toggles to change. To there's still configurability. There's still configurability, but it's not like when you open Notesnook, there's nothing, and then you add things to it and tune it and take away time from actual work. So we want to be the space for people to work on without tinkering with the system. It should be like the good defaults. Everything should work.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good goal. And it's funny, on my end, I tried Obsidian for myself because I heard so many people rave about it, and to me it felt too complicated. It felt like it just, that was my personal experience. I know people listening to this, I feel like half of them probably love Obsidian, but I couldn't get into it myself. And it was just really complex for I think I do overall basic things. And so for me, having a by default very clean, simple experience is actually something I prefer. But when I use Notesnook, there were still a lot of powerful features. So, it seems like at least so far you've done a pretty good job of
Yeah,
like by default keeping it
yeah,
simple.
yeah. That's our goal. Like we want to bring powerful features. Like lately, we have been discussing internally how we can bring AI into Notesnook. And I know like a lot of anti AI people, they will be like, oh, this is a buzzword. It's a buzzword. Don't use it. I assure you, it's not a buzzword for us. We really want to make it useful and private. So like powerful features are good if non tech savvy people can use them as well. So for example, there's like complex query languages like SQL and stuff like that, and people can use those, but normal people who don't have a lot of tech background, they can't grasp that. So it's better if there's a UI for it. It's easier for them. So that's our target. We want to make it simple for people to use powerful features.
Got it. Very cool. And I guess so. Is that on the horizon then for users interested in those features, or is that something you're still kind of early on about?
It's You can say we are experimenting. We are experimenting. I have in the code we have done a lot of things in the code, but it's not finalized. So for just like self-hosting, in the code it's done, but it's not finalized. It's not tested. It's not ready for production.
Got it. And I assume if you're doing it in a privacy respecting way, are you experimenting with AI locally on it has to, if it's end-to-end encrypted, it has to be done on the person's device, correct?
Exactly. Okay, so there are two choices. So there's one that is done by Google. If there are companies that follow Google. So it's like whatever you do, we will automatically use that data and train our models on it and improve our products and stuff like that. You have no choice in that matter. You can just opt out. If you use our products, your data will be used. And there's another branch where it's opt in. So you can choose to share the data that you have with these companies, and then they will train it. If you don't share that, they won't use it. What we are trying to do is, of course, it's like where the hardware right now is, it's kind of impossible to do everything on the device for everyone. I mean, there are people like who have like really high-end devices. They can use AI models and they can run them on locally on their devices, and it will be fine. So in Notesnook, we want to give people the option to use whichever model from wherever they want, either from locally their own devices, or they want to use OpenAI, or they want to use cloud or something like that, whatever they want, and they can use that. But aside from that, what we can do on the device locally, without any intervention from the user, we will do. So, for example, a search, AI-based search, that's something that we will do on the device. People will be able to, like, it won't, your data won't go out. It won't go to any server. It will be completely on the device. But for example, if you want to chat with Notesnook about your notes, that's something that will have to be done by a large language model. So you can run it anywhere you want, or you can choose something that's already on the cloud. Yeah, we want to be realistic because we don't want to gatekeep this and be like, okay, if you don't have a high-end device, you can't use it. That would like, a lot of people will be like, I don't care, just I want to use this feature. I can for this query, this search, I want to be able to use AI. But if they don't have a high-end device, they will have no choice.
I guess I wanted to touch a little bit on collaboration, because
Yeah.
I know that end-to-end encrypted collaboration is a really difficult thing to pull off. Because in my mind, you have end-to-end means you're storing your own encryption keys, but somehow you have to share that with someone else, and in real time, if there's any kind of changes being made to the document, somehow all those people have to be sharing and re-uploading the document. Because can you
Yeah.
not encrypt you can't just encrypt a change. You have to do the entire document, correct? So how does that
Yes.
work? How is the development for shared end-to-end encryption, and where are the challenges for doing that?
Yeah. So basically, there are different models for collaboration, and something like what the editor we are using, Prose Mirror, it has uh, it has its own built-in model that you can use to enable collaboration. It's not really that complex, but to do it well is complex. And to do it, it's not encrypted by default, but incorporate uh, you can incorporate encryption into it. So the way it works is, so whenever you make a change, it's either an addition, or it's either a removal, or it's either an edit. So like you're changing the whole word or something. So it just takes all that data, like from this position to this position, this document has changed, and these letters have been added. We can encrypt the data that says these letters have been added, and other information about like positions and where the cursor was and everything like that. But that can be public. I mean, it's not a sensitive data. No one can do anything with it. The actual data that's like what you have typed into the document, that's encrypted. So it's possible to do when there are different models. Uh, it's a trade-off. You have to try every model and see which works. A lot of people use YGS. It's a They have their own way of doing things. Yes.
Okay, and then you mentioned earlier there was some syncing complaints people were having that you fixed in V3. Did that have to do with collaboration or just general syncing? And what was the issue, and why was it hard to fix?
The main issue with syncing was that when you made a change on one device, it wouldn't go on the other device. So, for example, you were working on your phone and you made some edits on your phone, on a node, and then you logged off, you went home, and you opened your computer or your laptop, and you opened Notesnook, and you saw that those changes were not there. And now you have like that was a common issue where someone would make changes on one device and they wouldn't arrive on the other device. And we had to like change the whole system, the way syncing works. Like previously, what we were doing, like just give you a rough outline of what we were doing, was basically we were detecting changes based on time. So if you, for example, type the letter A, we would say, okay, he wrote that letter at this time. And then when you made another change, we would compare the two. Okay, so this note has changed, so it needs to be synced. But sometimes, because time is not that reliable on computers, for example, you're changing time zones, or something happens to your device, so the time would fluctuate, and that would create a gap in which the notes would not be sent to the server, and they would be completely missed out. So what we had to do were to get rid of the timing thing, not rely on time anymore. So there were a lot of changes on that. So we changed everything. We added toggles, like a property that's true or false. It just says, so if you make an edit, it says this note has been edited. It doesn't say when it was edited or why it was edited. It just says, okay, this was edited, so it needs to be synced. So it's more reliable. It doesn't depend on anything. You make a change, it gets synced. You will never see, like, if you type a letter, it will come on the other device, whatever you do. Yeah.
Very cool. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. I guess to kind of pivot a little bit, last time we spoke, you went recently open source. That was a pretty recent thing, and you emailed us, and you said that was like a big recent announcement for you guys. It's been a couple years now. What's that journey been like? Some projects go open source, and I think no one regrets ever going open source, but there's new challenges when you go open source. You expose yourself to the community. And sometimes the community, even if it's very good, positive criticism, you still have to now keep up with community's demands a little bit better sometimes. So I guess, where are the benefits of going open source, which I'm sure there are many, but are there any kind of negative sides of that as well that you can share? Because I'm sure there might be two sides of the coin here. But I'm sure no one ever regrets going open source, I'm sure. But I guess I'm just curious, what are kind of the behind the scenes updates on that 2 years later?
Okay, so uh, even before we went open source, it was internally we were discussing a lot about uh, the pros and cons. So the biggest fear that's still on our heads is someone would copy everything and they would start their own notes, and it would be competing product, and we would have to be like it would be like a headache, and that's still a possibility, and fortunately no one has done that I know of. That's one of the cons of going open source, that people can use whatever you do without any restrictions, uh, and for free. They can unlock everything and then run Notesnook, and no one will be able to stop them. That's one of the cons, and that's like the biggest con, because that is why things like Redis that recently changed their license. Uh, that was one of their biggest like fears, because people can just run it on their own infrastructure, or use it in a commercial setting without paying a penny, and that's really not good for the company that's building the product. So that was like the biggest con, but unfortunately no one has done it, and so far going open source was one of our best decisions, because whenever you make something that's privacy focused, the one thing that you need to earn, that you can't build, that you can't force, is trust. And there's no better way to earn people's trust uh, except going open source and an audit. Yeah, an audit. Yeah, that's something that's also been on our plans, to do a third-party audit, but that's still ongoing.
Yeah, I guess that's something I've seen. I actually, while you were talking, because I didn't include this in any of my notes or any of my outlines or anything, regarding trust, I feel like there's a few things that especially are recent and very real to people right now. Open source is always one of them that's consistent. And then the next one, I think you said audits. And the third one is sustainability, and like, in the face of VC funding or anything like that, will that influence the company? And I know it's a bit of a touchy subject, especially because I guess it might be a competitor, Skiff.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, okay, Skiff, collaborative notes, they got bought by Notes, or they got bought by Notion.
Notion.
Notion, thank you. And then, so I guess when it comes to you all there at Notesnook, because I chatted with the publicly, like on our forum, I chatted with the Skiff CEO, and they always said they were audited, but they never published their audits. And anytime I asked where are the audits, they would say, well, we did them, we'll publish them someday. We never saw those audits. So A, like, can we expect public audits if you do them? And B, I guess, how do you reassure the community that you won't just get acquired and disappear in 6 months? Because I know you've been here for 2 years now, you're a lot more established than they ever were. It's not a fair apples to apples comparison, but I know I've been seeing a lot more questions recently. And I do think, sadly, that service like Skiff has eroded the trust in other privacy services because of what they did, which I think is really unfair to other services. But I guess, what do you have to say, I guess, to try to reassure trust for users if they have any concerns?
Yeah. Okay. So the difference between Skiff and Notesnook, like taking out the time factor. Let's say Skiff and Notesnook had the same amount of time. So the difference is that we want to be transparent. We don't want to hide things from the community. We don't want to say, okay, this part of the code or this thing will not be shared with the community. So, for example, if we do audits, An audit will only make sense if its report is public and if it's regular. So because the code is always changing, you can't really audit your code once and be like, okay, I've done the audit and that's it. You have to continuously do it, and people should be able to use audited versions aside from the latest version. So the audited version would be separate, so you can stay on the audited version and be sure that this doesn't have any security vulnerabilities and it's secure and private. And then there would be the latest version, which has the latest integrated features until the new audit is done and you can move to the next version. So if we do it, we will do it this way. What Skiff did that I think they could have done a little bit better would be more transparent. Like, for example, when they got acquired, they weren't really open about it. Like, they should have said it out front, like, we got acquired, and yeah. But it looked like Skiff was not getting acquired and shut down. It was like they're just joining forces with Notion, and Skiff would go on. And we're not VC funded, so there's no danger of that getting acquired and anything. We want to do our own thing, and Notesnook is our primary project. So if we leave this, we will have nothing else. So there's no danger of that. And even if we do get acquired, I want this, like the audience who's watching this, even if we do get acquired, Notesnook will remain open source. You can fork our repositories, including our server, and run it on your own infrastructure. Hopefully, soon we will give instructions and everything. But you can still do it right now. And Notesnook is not going away in any way or form. So even if we go away, Notesnook is still here. Yeah, that's our guarantee.
Super cool. And yeah, I think going back to what you said earlier, especially if you introduce the ability to self-host, I think that really resolves a lot of concerns. And I think what people don't remember, Skiff, this was something else I brought up. Skiff was not very open source. Skiff advertised itself as being open source in kind of a sly way, because Skiff Mail was open source. Just Mail, Drive, Docs, I don't think Calendar, nothing else in their suite was open source except Skiff Mail. But it kind of advertised itself as being an open source suite. It was a little bit misleading in my eyes, because I thought it was open source for a long time based on the advertising. And I don't think I was the only one. And, if the server is also closed source, you couldn't do anything, but not even the code was open source for Docs, so it just made it really hard to verify anything and be able to even perhaps like build a way to view the documents for people who needed to leave the service and etc. So I think it'd be really cool, and it would really reassure users, if you not only are open source, but you're able to self-host it. If something crazy happens, like the whole service gets taken over and they blow it up, it's fine, because the code from last week still exists. Not blow up in the literal way, just like the code is like, screw this, they just destroy the repos. It's fine, because the code was there a week ago. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm sure the community appreciates hearing that.
Yeah, what you mentioned, I think Skiff was, they had their clients for all their apps. I think, recently when I was adding this support for Skiff in our importer from Skiff pages, I was adding support for it. I looked through their repository, and I think their clients were open source in some way or form. But the problem with something like Skiff is that even if your clients are open source, no one can do anything with it, because first of all, they don't run without an account. So even if you were able to run it on a local host on your own computer, you will only see the login screen. And even if you bypass that, you won't be able to do. It's like really coupled with the online experience. And the difference with Notesnook in that scenario is that you can run Notesnook without an internet, without an account. You can make notes, you can do everything. And if you're running it on your own computer, you can disable the limits on the pro features. So you won't even need to have an account. So it will still work. Even if you don't run a server, you can still run Notesnook on its own.
Nice. And I guess that's actually a perfect transition to kind of like one big thing I wanted to talk about, which was web apps, because I know Notesnook has a web app. You can use it on your web browser, your native clients. What's it like to have been developing a web app versus a native client? What are some of the pros and cons? Has V3 changed anything for that? Where do you see things going down the road?
Okay, so when you say native, do you mean like non-electron, or I'm a little confused about that, because electron is a big no-no in the community. Everyone's like, this is an electron app, I won't be using it. So do you by native, do you mean non-electron, or do you mean electron, or yeah, just clarify that.
You can touch on both. I personally don't mind considering Electron apps native apps, and I'm not by default an Electron hater. I've used plenty of good Electron apps, and I've used plenty of bad ones. I think it's really dependent on the implementation. But yeah, I'm down to hear about both, and I'm sure we have the time for it.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so this is like this discussion happens a lot internally, like among our team. Like, should we have a truly native experience on the desktop, like non-electron? And we have been researching technologies. We have tried out Skyter. We have tried out like these new technologies coming in. We are constantly checking out engines, JavaScript engines. We checked out Qt and stuff like that. But the thing is that no, it's not worth the effort to build a separate native app that's not Electron, because first of all, it's redundant. We don't have a huge team. So for example, if we are building the native desktop app along with the web app, we have to write the code twice. And even if we had a way to somehow share the logic and share everything, even then there would be a lot of effort going through testing, going through checking every feature, making sure it looks the same, it works the same, everything like that. And the trade-off, like the benefit, if we can consider like of a native non-electron app, is that it consumes less resources. But recently I have been testing out Notesnook, the electron client, what we already have, and it doesn't take that much resources. Even in size, it's not that big. Like, it's 80 megabytes compared to like if you are using Qt, that will be like I think 40 MB. Still 50% less, but it's not like a huge difference. So even in size, installation size, it's not that big. So the trade-off isn't like, it doesn't make sense. I like native apps. I like apps that run native, that's not Electron. But yeah, if for a small team, it's not doable. You can say that. And now coming to the other question, that's like, what's the difference between web and like, yeah. So if we are talking specifically about Notesnook, there have been a lot of we have added we have changed a lot of things that are specific to the desktop app. That's specific to the native client. So one example is desktop integration. So you can change the title bar. I don't know if you have used Notesnook yourself. So you can now the title bar is more integrated. It has it looks much more like if you're in Figma or you're using something like that. It doesn't look like a web app running inside an Electron skin anymore. It's more integrated into the ecosystem, and you'll feel right at home using it. And the other thing that we are doing is we are doing the encryption, the database, the SQLite that we're using. It's all native, so that means the performance is better, the encryption will be faster, your sync will run faster, and because the web is great, but it has its own issues. It's not that fast. So even if you're doing things in WebAssembly that's supposed to be faster than JavaScript, there are some things that are just not that fast, that much faster than doing it natively on the device. So there are constantly small things that we can offload onto the native side, and we're constantly looking for things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so do you think if you had infinite resources and infinite time, you would opt to use native apps for Notesnook?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I've said, I love native apps. I love native apps. I want to build a native app for Notesnook. I'm constantly looking at technologies that can help me do that. But right now, right at this instant, the technology is not focused towards making that easier. There are technologies, and I've been trying different things out, but it's not that easy right now. But if I had infinite resources, I had like thousands of engineers. Like for example, if I was Google scale or Microsoft scale, I would not use Electron for any of my apps. I would not. Yeah, that would be like a no because I have that resource. I can do it. But right now, at this stage, it's not
Right.
possible.
And I have to assume, let's say you really prioritize that. Let's say you really put all of your time and effort into building native apps. I have to assume that means that development would be much slower. You're probably going to see a lot less updates, a lot less features, possibly even more bugs if you're not able to deal with bugs universally. Because right now, if you fix a bug on one client, that's probably going to fix it across all clients. But if you have native clients, you have to fix it on all clients. So I have to assume that, let's say you're building 4 native apps, you're not just doubling your workload. You're increasing your workload by 4x. So I feel like it's
Yes.
a pretty exponential issue. And then rolling out new clients, let's say someone
Yes.
wants a Fedora package, then that's a whole new thing you have to build. So I have to assume that it
Exactly.
adds up a lot.
Yeah, that's the thing that Electron makes. Like it's a container that can run web app, but you can also use native features from the operating system. So it makes that bridging the gap between web and native. It makes it a lot easier for developers and for users, because installing an Electron app is, I think, it's much easier on non-orthodox operating systems, because Electron is basically a Chrome, and Chrome runs everywhere. So it's just it's easier. So if you're doing your own thing, you're building your own thing, you have to take care of graphics. So for example, there are just recently someone was building, I think, an editor, a text editor made in Rust that was fully native. They were doing their own drawing. I think it's called Zed. And
I
one of
saw
the
this.
issues with that is, yeah, you must have seen it. And one of the issues is they are completely focused on macros, right? And because it's a big thing, they have to write their own UI code, their own rendering logic, and everything for each platform separately, and that's not easy. And each platform has their own quirks, their own subtle bugs, and it's like juggling all that. It's easier to just go with Electron at my scale, like at our scale. It's much easier to just not deal with those kind of issues. So yeah, it's just a trade-off between convenience and performance, or whatever you want to call it.
No, I think that's good. Actually, so I've been using, I'm embarrassed about it because it's just what I got familiar with, and everything feels too complicated. I know everybody's using Microsoft Studio lately, or not Studio. They're using Microsoft's IDE, I think.
Yeah, VS Code.
VS Code, thank you. A lot of people are using VS Code right now as their text editor for programming and things like that. I'm still using Sublime. It's what I learned on,
Okay.
and but here I know everyone laughs when I say that. And I tried Zed because our new editor, Jordan on our team, they suggested Zed, or at least they thought it looked cool. And I tried it out, but I have this little rule that I have for myself, which is I'm not going to commit to using a piece of software that locks me in to any operating system or locks me into having to use an account for this specific service. I always want to leave my options open. I look back on my journey the last 10 years, and I've used Windows, I've used Mac OS, I've used several Linux distributions, and I wouldn't have been able to hop around and use different operating systems if I was all in on the Apple suite or I was all in on Microsoft suite. And so that's the issue I have with things like Zed. I was like, I'm not going to use a text editor and fall in love with this. I think it's less embarrassing to at least use Sublime, which is available on all platforms, than to be all in on a Mac OS only one. But so I appreciate having the option to use any operating system with something like Notesnook or something like that, because it keeps me open.
Yes, and when you mentioned Sublime, Sublime is a great editor. I personally used it a couple of times. I keep switching back to VS Code because it fits my workflows.
Everyone likes VS Code.
But I love. No, but it's a wonder. Sublime Text is a wonderful application. It's wonderful in that how performant it is. Like, you can just compare the speeds of both the apps opening. Like, you can click on the Sublime app and it will open instantaneously. No matter if it's a cold start, if it's a hot start, it doesn't matter. It just opens, and it opens from where you left off. Their UI and UX is really great. And like, a Sublime Text is a really great application, but it's just preference, I think. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Everyone, Jonah on our team has been really trying to get me to use VS Code, and I did install it. I moved everything over to it, and I used it for a week, not even a week, a few days maybe, because I just couldn't. It was just too much for me. I think for people who actually need a text editor, like they actually need one, I think they're probably using VS Code. For someone like me who's just touching up a few things on GitHub, fixing up our website here and there, maybe even taking notes, like just casual, like, oh my gosh, someone is saying something to me on the train station. Let me quickly take this down in my notes. I think that's where Sublime's really nice for me, because it's a lot more minimal, and like you said, it opens instantly and it saves all your stuff automatically. So yeah, off topic.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Off topic, yeah. No.
I guess on that note, have you had any feature requests to make Notesnook more of like a text editor, like an offline local text editor, or is that kind of a totally different? Because I feel like people even use Obsidian in that way with probably some plugins, I'd assume.
Yes. A lot of people have come to us, and not a lot of people, but a few people have come to us, and they're like, make it more like Obsidian. Like, literally, they're like, make it work more like Obsidian. So it's offline, and I can just, use my own text files or one-time files or whatever format that you want to use, and store my data in there, and then I can sync it using my own infrastructure, my own Nextcloud or OwnCloud or whatever cloud. But the problem with that is it doesn't fit with our focus, because for a normal user who's not attuned to all these formats, like for a lot of users don't even know what Markdown is, and I know it's a really common format and everyone is using it and stuff, but it's still, for a lot of people, Markdown is not, they don't know what it is, and syncing your own nodes by your own self using your own cloud, that's even more complex, and that's not what we are trying to do with Notesnook. Notesnook is supposed to make things simpler, not complexer. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think, and I have seen this pattern where I think when you open yourself up to a more technical crowd, especially when you go open source, you get a lot more niche feature requests, many of which are super cool and like have really cool use cases. But I think that, do you struggle sometimes to, because you have your own vision as Notesnook the company, which is to probably make a lot of this really simple and easy to use. Do you feel like the open source community can sometimes have their own vision for the product that isn't the same as that, and it's hard sometimes to have a clashing vision? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, so the thing is, everyone wants to solve their own problems. Like, whenever a user comes to us, they have a problem and they want to solve it. They don't care how it's solved, as long as it's solved. And for some people, the problem is like they want to keep the data on their own device, like they're scared that they will lose the data and stuff like that. So if we can solve the problem in our own way, it works for them. And then there's a minority that wants to solve it in their own way, and they won't take anything else. So, for example, a few people have recently, not recently, they're on and off. They keep coming and they're like, we want a spreadsheet inside Notesnook, like a full Excel editor. And that's something that it just doesn't fit my understanding of a Notes app. For me, a Notes app is not something where you do complex Excel sheet and you store all that data. But they keep coming and they keep making those requests. And eventually, I know that we will eventually add a subset of those features into our tables or try to solve that problem. Because the main problem is that they want to do some basic calculations like keeping a budget, or they're running a project, some simple additions, multiplications, divisions, and simple math. But for example, someone wants graphs, and so someone wants like really complex. That's not where Notesnook is. That's not the solution that Notesnook is trying to offer. So it's the hardest thing to do is saying no. Whenever a user comes, he's a potential customer. He wants to try out your app. He's doing your big thing. And if you say no to them, like no, this is not where I see Notesnook going. This is not. It's really hard. And whenever I have to do it, I constantly think about that feature in my mind for like a week. And if I find a way, I try to give that user an alternative. But sometimes there is no alternative, so you have to say no. It's still hard. It's still really hard. But mentally you know that you have done the work.
Right. And you do have to call those shots. I mean, if you're the person in charge, you do have to make those decisions sometimes, because you're the person who has the biggest picture, and you can see everything happening. You know the resources you have, you know the direction you want things to go, you know the users you want to serve. And sometimes, people bring up really, really great things that are great ideas, and you go, wow, no, that's perfect. And sometimes it's like that actually is a great idea. It's just not something that aligns with what I'm going
Exactly.
for. We have to deal with it too all the time. People have a ton of great suggestions, and I have to go look. Like a big one for us as an example is translations. People want us to like translate all our videos into like their specific language, which we would love to do. I mean, it sounds great. Why would I not want our videos and our content and the education accessible to more people? But I don't think people realize the amount of resources and time it takes to do translations for each language. So for us to commit to doing 5 different languages for all of our videos, we already fall behind a lot on our production. That's just one more thing that's going to delay things for everybody. So it's hard sometimes. Sometimes it's just a scaling logistics thing, if anything.
Yes, I completely agree. Completely agree. We are a small team, and it's just people keep making. We have like on our Discord server, we have a specific channel for suggestions, and every day there are like 5 to 10 new suggestions, and there are some like really great suggestions that we want to add, and we can add if we have time. And so for those features, we don't say no, but we don't commit. And I've learned this the hard way, that committing is the worst mistake. So if you, for example, publicly say that I will do this in a week, and you don't do it in a week, everyone is going to be like, why didn't you do it in a week? And it's just, so I have learned through like experience that don't commit, like don't give specific dates. And it's frustrating for the community, I know, and for people who are listening from our community. They must understand it's really hard to tune out those voices, or like, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it? So yeah.
Well, I guess kind of the final question I have before I kind of open it up to you is, it's kind of a double question. I'm really good at doing double questions where I kind of ask a few questions in one maybe. But do you have any like integrations or partnerships that you've been exploring or want to explore? And also just in general, what's next for Notesnook? What can people expect? Like is there anything you're able to share that people can be excited for without dates?
Okay, without dates. Okay, so some things. I already mentioned self-hosting. We're also working on pricing plans, new pricing plans. I can't give out any details yet because they're still in progress. But we are changing our pricing structure. That's one of the one of the biggest things that are coming out. Maybe this month, maybe next month. And then, as we promised the community, we're going to do the third-party audit finally. Those are the three things that are like right on the horizon. After that, we are going to bring like two things that are in our mind is drawing support and voice memos. So with transcription. And one other thing that I forgot, AI features. AI features. Yeah, we want to bring better search, drawing support, and voice memos with transcription. Yeah, those are like 6 things that are on horizon. Yeah.
Very cool. Voice memos are something I'm a big fan of. People in my personal life know I use voice memos a lot, and they also wish sometimes there were transcriptions, and so I know that will be very much appreciated.
Yeah, we want to do it on the device, the transcription, but if we can't do it, we will have to make that trade-off of offering users better transcription services using online cloud something.
Well, do you have any just closing thoughts for people who are listening, either current Notesnook customers or just anyone who's just listening to this for fun, has never used it before?
Closing thoughts. Yeah, so basically, for people who tried out Notesnook last year or the year before that, I want you to give Notesnook another chance because a lot of things have changed. We have new things, we have fixed a lot of things, so you guys should give Notesnook another chance. It's really improved. We have added note linking and everything like that. So give it a chance. If you have any issues, any questions, just reach out to us via any of our support channels, and we will be happy to help you out. Other than that, yeah, it's awesome. And I want to thank you, Henry, for giving us this opportunity to talk about Notesnook and whatever we did in V3 and stuff like that. So
of course,
this is a big opportunity for us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So thank you for being on the podcast, and I know people will really love it. And I know a lot of people in our community talk about your service, and like on our forum. It was just a community member that posted the news about V3, and a ton of people were just talking about it. And so it's cool to see just a little following within our community that does genuinely love your service too. So
yeah, that was awesome. Whenever someone from the community shares the news, and I constantly keep checking the Reddit, and I keep checking Twitter, I keep checking different forums like Privacy Guides, Techlore. And whenever someone posts about Notesnook or mentions Notesnook, I it's like an eagle vision. I constantly go there and I read all the conversation, like what are people saying, whatever. And it's really exciting. It's really humbling experience to like I have made this thing, and people are now mentioning it, and it feels really great. And thank you to everyone who has done that. Like from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
And there you have it, friends. If you want to learn more about Notesnook, they have a lot more information on their website. If you have any follow-up questions, go ahead and leave them on the forum post, and I'll be sure to let Abdullah know so he can go ahead and check those out on our forum. If you enjoy these interviews, we really couldn't do them without people on Patreon, patreon.com/Techlore. All of you are helping support this kind of content and allowing us to do these interviews. I want to thank Abdullah for his time. I want to thank you all for listening and taking control of your digital rights, one interview at a time, and I really hope that these interviews provide you all the same value that it provides me. I learn a lot from these interviews, and I feel like most people would as well. Again, join our Patreon, subscribe, leave a rating if you're listening to the podcast, or give us a like on YouTube. Share this with people you know, and we'll see you next time on Techlore.